Mom, you're the only one who can really take care of them. Besides, you don't have anything important to do anymore. The words from my daughter, Jessica, cut through me like a silent knife as I held little Chloe, barely a year old, squirming against my chest. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if, for a second, this feels familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. It was a March afternoon in Chicago, when the air still held the bite of winter, but promised the arrival of warmer days. I, Carol Ann Miller, 71 years old, a widow for 5 years, stood at the door of my small condo in Oak Lawn, watching my only daughter haul her Louis Vuitton suitcase toward the waiting Uber. Jessica wore a beige cashmere coat I could never afford, even with my full Social Security check. Her platinum blonde hair, dyed at a Gold Coast salon that charged more than my monthly grocery budget, shone under the last rays of the sun. She wore enormous sunglasses, like those movie stars we used to watch together when she was a little girl, before she learned to see me as a convenient burden. The twins, Dylan and Emma, 7 years old, were tearing through my tiny living room like uncontrolled hurricanes, screaming that they wanted to watch cartoons. Their shrill voices bounced off the faded floral wallpaper, a pattern I'd chosen 20 years ago, when I still believed my home would be a permanent refuge and not a free hotel for family emergencies. "I won't be gone that long, Mom. Just a month, maybe 2, Jessica continued, not even turning to look at me, her eyes glued to her phone with the typical obsession of those who have more important lives to attend to. "The trip to Bali is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for my spiritual growth. Besides, the yoga retreat costs a fortune. I can't let it go to waste. Right, Mom?" She didn't wait for my answer. She never did. She offered her cheek with the mechanical gesture of someone fulfilling a protocol, not of someone saying goodbye to her mother after abandoning her with 3 small children. Her French perfume, sweet and suffocating, mixed with the smell of Chloe's sour milk and the lingering aroma of the pot roast I'd prepared that morning, naively believing we would all have one last lunch together before she left. But there was no family lunch. Jessica had arrived in a rush, 20 minutes late as always, claiming the traffic from her penthouse in Lincoln Park was impossible and that she had no time for ceremonies. As I held Chloe, who was starting to cry with that heart-wrenching wail babies have only when they sense their mother's abandonment, my knees protested with a dull, familiar ache. The arthritis I'd been ignoring for years flared up whenever the weather changed. But who had time to think about an old woman's aches when there were children to care for? "Look, Mom, you know where everything is. The diapers are in the guest room. Chloe's bottle needs to be heated for exactly 2 minutes in the microwave, never more, because it gets too hot. Dylan takes his asthma medication every 8 hours. The alarm on my phone is set. I'm leaving it here on the table. Emma only eats mac and cheese, no vegetables. You know how she gets if you push her." Her instructions came like bullets, fast and impersonal. As I tried to process that for the next few weeks, or months, my quiet retirement routine would become the chaos of a makeshift daycare. My living room, which until that morning had been my silent sanctuary where I embroidered tablecloths while listening to afternoon talk shows, was now unrecognizable. Multicolored plastic toys were scattered across the floor like the wreckage of a childish shipwreck. The wooden coffee table where I used to have my tea and Nilla wafers was covered in coloring books, broken crayons, and the remains of a yogurt cup Emma had decided to use as finger paint. "Oh, and one more thing." Jessica paused at the threshold, one hand on the doorknob. "Don't text me too much, okay? I'll be in a different time zone and it's distracting. Besides, the kids are perfect with you. I know you, Mom. You always worry for nothing." For nothing? That phrase lodged in my chest like a splinter. Because yes, she knew me. She knew every worry line that had appeared on my face during the sleepless nights when she had pneumonia at age 5. She knew these hands that had worked folding clothes at a dry cleaner's for 30 years to pay for her business degree. She knew this back that had stooped from carrying grocery bags, caring for her father during his long illness, scrubbing other people's floors so she could have new shoes every school year. But apparently, knowing my history of sacrifice didn't mean valuing my present. The Uber pulled away with a low rumble, taking my daughter toward O'Hare Airport, while I was left at the door with a crying Chloe in my arms, and the twins racing upstairs like wild animals freed from their cage. For the first time in my 71 years, I felt completely invisible. It wasn't that I didn't know how to care for children. I had raised Jessica practically on my own after her father, Michael, started drinking more than he should. I knew how to change diapers, make baby food, invent stories to soothe nightmares. The problem wasn't my ability. The problem was that no one had asked me if I wanted to do it. I closed the door to my condo and headed for the kitchen, where the pot roast I'd made with so much love was cooling in the pot. A reminder that I had cooked for 5, but would end up eating alone, as always. Chloe was still crying. Dylan was shouting from the bathroom that he couldn't find any toilet paper. And Emma had discovered my box of embroidery thread and was unraveling it all over the room like it was carnival confetti. I sat in my favorite chair, a worn velvet armchair that had belonged to my mother, and looked out the window toward the building's inner courtyard. The neighbors were hanging their laundry on their balconies, just like every afternoon, following the quiet, predictable routine that I had lost forever. Or so I thought then. Because that day, as I rocked Chloe until she stopped crying and the twins finally fell asleep in front of the TV, something shifted inside me. A tiny seed of rebellion that had been dormant for decades began to stir. For the first time in a long time, I looked at myself in the hallway mirror before going to bed. I saw the face of a woman who had given her entire life to others. Deep wrinkles around eyes that had cried too much. White hair I'd stopped dyeing because, what's the point? Nobody looks at me anymore. Age-spotted hands that had given everything without asking for anything in return. That night, as the 3 children slept in my bed, because it was the only thing that calmed them, I stayed awake on the sofa, staring at the ceiling and asking myself a question I had never dared to ask before. When was the last time anyone had taken care of me? I found no answer. Only silence and the hum of the building's central heating, whispering nocturnal secrets no one else would ever hear. The first few days with the children were a whirlwind of memories I would have preferred to keep buried. As I made breakfast for the twins, toast with Nutella, because it was the only thing Emma would eat without throwing a fit, my hands trembled as I opened the jar. Not because of the arthritis, but because that sweet smell transported me back 30 years. Jessica was the same age as Emma then. I worked at Mrs. Peterson's dry cleaners from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, my hands always red from the chemicals and my back aching from lifting pounds of dirty clothes. Her father, Michael, had been laid off from his construction job and had found solace in the glasses at the bar downstairs. I remember that October morning perfectly, when I came home after a particularly grueling shift. I had ironed 50 shirts for executives who would never know my name, and the soles of my feet burned as if I'd walked on hot coals. I found Jessica sitting on the living room floor, drawing with colored pencils she had stolen from school because I couldn't afford to buy her a new box. "Mommy, the other girls have new pencil cases and I only have 3 broken pencils," she said without looking up, furiously coloring a yellow sun that took up the whole page. "Miss Carmen says we need to bring poster board for the science project tomorrow." Poster board. That word stabbed me like a dagger. It cost $20, and I had exactly 15 in my wallet to get us through the end of the week. Michael had spent the rest on his liquid medicine, as he called the cheap brandy he bought at the liquor store. That night, after putting Jessica to bed with a made-up story about princesses who lived in castles made of magical poster board, I went out. I knocked on the door of Mrs. Gable, the neighbor on the 2nd floor, who always needed someone to clean her house on weekends. "Could you give me an advance on this month's payment, Mrs. Gable? My little girl needs school supplies urgently." The woman looked me up and down, assessing my desperation as if I were an item at a flea market. "I'll pay you $70 to clean the whole house, including the windows. But you have to do it right now, Carol. My son is coming with his family tomorrow, and I want everything spotless." I accepted. I cleaned for 5 hours, my knees raw from scrubbing the marble floor in her living room, while she supervised from her leather armchair, criticizing the way I cleaned the picture frames. The next day, Jessica came home from school beaming, hugging me with a force that nearly knocked me over. "Mommy, my project was the best in the whole class. Miss Carmen said I have so much creativity. You know what? When I grow up, I'm going to buy you all the poster board in the world so you never have to worry about anything again." I held her tight, inhaling the smell of kids' shampoo from her hair, and for a moment, I believed all the suffering was worth it. Now, 30 years later, as Emma rejected the toast because it had too much Nutella, I wondered what had become of that promise. Dylan interrupted my thoughts with a coughing fit that sent a chill down my spine. I ran to him, patted his back like I had learned to do with his mother, and desperately searched for the inhaler Jessica had mentioned. "Grandma Carol, I can't breathe right," he mumbled, his eyes watery, and in that moment, I saw Jessica's face at 8 years old when she had pneumonia and we spent 3 days in the ER at Cook County Hospital. I was alone that time, too. Michael had disappeared on one of his multi-day outings, leaving me with a child burning with fever and a prescription for antibiotics that cost more than my weekly salary. I sold my only gold ring, an heirloom from my grandmother, to pay for the private treatment the doctor recommended. "Your daughter needs complete bed rest, Mrs. Miller. No school for 2 weeks. Someone needs to watch her 24 hours a day," the doctor explained as he wrote out an endless prescription. I asked for unpaid leave from the dry cleaners. Mrs. Peterson was not sympathetic. "Carol, if you're out for 2 weeks, I'll have to find a replacement. There are a lot of women looking for work. Please, Mrs. Peterson. It's just until my little girl gets better." Mothers always have the same excuse. Businesses can't stop for your domestic problems. I lost the job, but Jessica recovered. For those 2 weeks, I slept in a chair by her bed, checking her temperature every hour, making her gentle broths, and reading her the same stories over and over until my voice grew hoarse. "Mommy, when I'm all better, I'm going to take care of you just like you take care of me," she whispered one night as I stroked her sweaty forehead. Another promise that had evaporated like the steam from the soups I made for her. The phone rang that Friday afternoon. It was Jessica, calling from some tropical paradise where the Wi-Fi allowed her to contact the real world for a few minutes. "How are the kids, Mom?" she asked with that distracted voice of someone making a courtesy call while doing other, more important things. "Dylan had an asthma attack yesterday. Emma won't eat anything but mac and cheese. And Chloe cries every night because she misses you." "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. Dylan always exaggerates his asthma for attention. Emma's just going through a phase. She'll get over it. And Chloe is too little to really miss anyone. Babies adapt quickly. They adapt quickly. As if her own children's feelings were temporary inconveniences that would resolve themselves. "Jessica, I need you to tell me exactly when you're coming back. The kids need routines and I tried to explain, but she cut me off. "Mom, please, don't stress me out. I'm on a very important healing retreat for my personal growth. I can't be constantly thinking about problems at home. Besides, you raised a daughter practically on your own, didn't you? This is temporary. Just hang in there a little longer. Just hang in there a little longer." Those words summed up my entire life. Hang in there when Michael spent the rent money on gambling. Hang in there when Jessica decided to go to an expensive private university because she deserved the best. Hang in there when she married Rick and asked me to take out a second mortgage on my condo to help them with the down payment for their penthouse in Lincoln Park. "It's an investment, Mom. The real estate market only goes up. In 5 years, I'll be able to pay you back double." She had convinced me with that smile she inherited from her father, the same one she used to borrow money she never returned. I was still paying off the mortgage. At 71, I sent $400 to the bank every month for a loan that had allowed my daughter and her husband to live in a neighborhood where the homes cost more than everything I would earn in my entire lifetime. When they divorced 3 years later, Jessica got the penthouse, Rick got the car, and I got the debt. "Don't worry, Mom. Now that I'm free, I'm going to focus on my career. I'll be able to help you more," she promised me the day they signed the divorce papers. But helping more meant bringing the kids over every weekend while she went out with men she met on dating apps, looking to reconnect with her femininity after years of marital sacrifice. That evening, as I bathed the twins in my small bathtub that barely had room for one, Dylan looked at me with those dark eyes, identical to his mother's. "Grandma Carol, why does Mommy always leave?" The question broke my heart because I had asked the same question about my own mother, who worked as a maid in other people's houses and came home so exhausted she barely had energy for more than a goodnight kiss. "Your mommy needs to work, sweetie, so she can take better care of you. But you don't need to leave to take care of us. Why does she? I didn't know what to say, because the truth was too harsh for a 7-year-old. The truth was that Jessica left because she could, because she knew there would always be someone willing to pick up the pieces of her irresponsibility, someone who would never say no, someone whose life was so expendable it could be interrupted without consequences. That someone was me. That night, after tucking the 3 children into my bed, I stayed awake on the sofa, looking at the family photos hanging on the wall. Jessica smiling at her graduation, wearing the dress I had paid for by selling my pearl earrings. Jessica at her wedding, radiant in a gown that cost more than my salary for 6 months. Jessica with the children in their first days, posing as the perfect mother she pretended to be on social media. I wasn't in any of those pictures. I was always the one taking the photo, never the one in it. Just like in real life. The following week was my 72nd birthday. A gray Tuesday in April that began just like any other day, with no fanfare or celebration. I woke up at 6 because Chloe had been crying all night, and as I warmed her bottle in the kitchen, I stared at the calendar hanging by the fridge. The red circle I had drawn around the 15th mocked me, as if I had been naive to think anyone would remember. Dylan and Emma ate their cereal while I tried to comb the rebellious curls of little Chloe, who seemed to have inherited both her mother's beauty and her temper. The phone remained silent all morning, a mute witness to my insignificance. At 2 in the afternoon, when I had lost all hope, it rang. My heart pounded like a teenager waiting for a call from her crush. "Mom!" Jessica's voice came through, distorted by the international connection, mixed with the sound of waves and background music. "How is everything over there?" I waited. I mentally counted to 10, then to 20. Maybe she would mention it at the end of the conversation, like people who save the best for last. "The kids are fine. Dylan had another asthma episode last night, but he's okay now. Emma still won't eat vegetables and Chloe," I began to report, like a hired nanny giving her daily update. "Oh, great, Mom. Hey, I'm calling real quick because the Wi-Fi here is crazy expensive. I just wanted to tell you I met an incredible Australian surf instructor. His name is Jake, and he has these killer blue eyes. I think I'm going to stay on this beach for another week. The spiritual retreats here are one of a kind. I can't pass up this opportunity for personal growth." Another week. While she was growing personally with blue-eyed Jake, I was growing older taking care of her children in a condo that permanently smelled of dirty diapers and baby food. "Jessica, today is," I tried to say, but the line went dead. I was left holding the phone, listening to the monotonous dial tone confirming the conversation was over. Chloe chose that exact moment to throw up on my favorite blouse, the only decent one I had left for special occasions that never came. That afternoon, while the twins watched cartoons and Chloe took her nap, I sat in my armchair with a cup of chamomile tea and a muffin I had bought from the bakery downstairs. 72 imaginary candles that no one would blow out with me. I remembered my last birthday, my 71st. Michael had been gone for 2 years, but Jessica had come with the kids. We had eaten lasagna at the neighborhood Italian place, the one where Tom makes the pasta a little overcooked but it tastes like a family sundae. Jessica had paid the bill without complaining, had brought a cake from the expensive bakery on Michigan Avenue, and for a moment, I thought maybe things were changing between us. Now I understood it had just been a coincidence. Or guilt. Or both. On Wednesday morning, while looking for diapers in Chloe's bag, I found something I shouldn't have seen. Jessica's phone, which she'd forgotten in her rush to the airport, had stayed connected to my Wi-Fi and was still receiving texts. I didn't mean to read her conversation, but the phone buzzed, the screen lit up, and the first lines of the message appeared on the lock screen. "Christine, how's the spiritual retreat with Jake the surfer? Your mom must be at her wit's end with the kids by now." Jessica, "Ilmao, my mom is loving it. It's not like she has her own life anymore. This gives her purpose. Besides, she gets the dedicated grandma experience she always wanted for free." Christine, "You're savage, Jess. But you're right. Our mother's generation lives to sacrifice for us. It's like their natural programming." Jessica, "Exactly. My mom raised a kid practically on her own. Now she can raise her grandkids. It's what she does best. Meanwhile, I'm focusing on healing my soul and finding true love." The words blurred before my eyes as if I were reading them through tears. But I wasn't crying. I was too stunned to cry. It's not like she has her own life anymore. This gives her purpose. It's like their natural programming. I put the phone down on the table as if it were burning, but it was too late. Those phrases were seared into my memory, word for word, comma for comma. My daughter hadn't just abandoned me with her responsibilities. She had turned me into a private joke she shared with her friends. I was the devoted mother, the available grandmother, the woman with no life of her own who existed solely to clean up the emotional messes of others. That afternoon, while the kids were playing in the living room, I locked myself in the bathroom and took a long look in the mirror. I saw a woman with disheveled white hair, deep dark circles under her eyes, and wrinkles that had deepened over the last few weeks. I had been wearing the same housecoat for 3 days because there was no point in getting dressed up to clean up vomit and change diapers. But most of all, I saw someone who had become invisible, even to herself. When was the last time I had gotten dressed up to go out? When had I had lunch with a friend, gone to the movies, or just walked through Millennium Park for no particular reason? When had I been Carol Ann Miller and not Jessica's mom or the kids' grandma? I couldn't remember. On Thursday night, I received another call from Jessica, this time more excited than ever. "Mom, you're not going to believe this. Jake invited me to go to Australia with him. Can you imagine? Seeing Sydney, the Great Barrier Reef, living the adventure of a lifetime? I think this could be true love." "And the children?" I asked, my voice a thread. "The children are perfectly fine with you, Mom. You can tell you adore them. Besides, it's only for a few months. 3, 4 at the most. Just enough time to see if Jake and I have a future together. At my age, I can't pass up these opportunities. 4 months. 16 more weeks of diapers, tantrums, sleepless nights, medication, doctor's appointments, constant worry. Jessica, I can't," I started to say. But she interrupted me with that crystalline laugh she used when she thought someone was being ridiculous. "Can't what, Mom? Take care of your own grandchildren? Please don't be dramatic. It's exactly what you did with me my whole childhood. Only now it's easier because you don't have to work at that horrible dry cleaners." I didn't have to work at the dry cleaners because my widow's pension barely covered my expenses, and because I was too old for anyone to hire me. But apparently, that made me the perfect candidate for a full-time, unpaid nanny. "Besides," she continued without pausing for breath, "the kids need you. Dylan told me you taught him how to make paper airplanes like you used to with me. Emma says your stories are better than the ones on Netflix. And Chloe already says Grandma better than Mama. It's clear you have a natural gift for this. A natural gift." As if sacrificing my freedom, my health, and my peace of mind were a talent I was born with instead of an obligation that had been forced upon me. That night, after putting the kids to bed with more difficulty than ever because Dylan had nightmares, and Emma refused to sleep until I told her 3 different stories, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea that grew cold as I tried to sort out my thoughts. On the table was the electric bill, which had arrived that morning. $300 more than the previous month because I was now keeping the heat on all day for the kids, constantly doing laundry, and the fridge was running non-stop to keep bottles and baby food fresh. There was also the grocery receipt. Diapers, formula, special cereals, children's medicine, products I had never needed to buy and which had tripled my monthly expenses. My Social Security survivor benefit was $847 a month. After paying the mortgage, utilities, and the extra food for the children, I had less than $100 left for everything else. But according to my daughter, I had no life of my own, so I didn't need any money of my own either. I took a sheet of paper and started writing down numbers. How much it cost me to support the 3 children per day. How much I would have to spend if Jessica really stayed in Australia for 4 more months with blue-eyed Jake. The result left me cold. I would need at least $500 extra a month just to cover the kids' basic expenses. Money I didn't have. Money I would have to get by borrowing, selling the few valuable things I had left, or simply going hungry so they wouldn't. In that moment, something inside me broke. It wasn't a dramatic sound like glass shattering on the floor. It was more subtle, like when a crack slowly opens in a wall. At first, just a fine, almost imperceptible line. but over time it becomes a fissure that threatens to bring down the whole structure. I got up from the table, went to the drawer where I kept my important documents, and took out the savings passbook I hadn't touched in years. The balance was ridiculous. 1,047 that I had saved penny by penny over decades, money set aside for emergencies or for the funeral someone would one day have to pay for. But apparently, the emergency was here, and that emergency had names: Dylan, Emma, and Chloe. 3 innocent children whose parents had decided their grandmother was a free and inexhaustible resource. That night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't stay up worrying about the children. I stayed up worrying about myself, and I discovered something terrifying. I no longer knew who Carol Ann Miller was when she wasn't being useful to others. On Friday morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. For the first time in 72 years, I dialed Jessica's number and let it ring until it went to voicemail. "Jessica, it's your mother. I need to talk to you urgently. The kids are fine, but this can't go on. Call me today." My voice sounded strange, firmer than I expected. I hung up the phone and stared at it as if it were an alien object that had suddenly appeared in my kitchen. I didn't have to wait long. 3 hours later, my phone rang with the annoying ringtone Dylan had set without my permission. "Mom? What's wrong? Your message scared me. Did one of the kids get hurt?" The concern in her voice was genuine, but only for her children. For me, not a single question. "The kids are perfectly fine, Jessica. I'm the problem. You? What's wrong with you? Are you sick?" "I'm not sick in my body. I'm sick of being invisible. I'm sick of you using me as a free nanny while you live your life of adventure. I'm sick of you forgetting your mother exists when you don't need her." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Jessica spoke, and her tone had completely changed. "Mom, what are you talking about? Nobody is using you. You're their grandmother. It's natural for you to take care of your grandkids. I worked so hard for years. I need this break to find myself. And what about me finding myself, Jessica? When is it my turn? Please, Mom, don't be ridiculous. You already lived your life. You got married, had a daughter, you worked. Now it's time for you to enjoy your grandchildren. You already lived your life." Those 4 words hit me like a slap. As if at 72, I was a piece of old furniture only good for being useful to others. "Jessica, I need you to come back. Now." "Excuse me? Come back now?" "Mom, I'm in Bali. I can't just hop on a bus and show up at your house in 2 hours. Besides, Jake and I are planning to go to Australia. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Then find someone else to take care of your children because I can't do this anymore." Another silence. But this time I could hear her breathing quicken. "What do you mean you can't do this anymore? What are you talking about, Mom?" "I'm talking about my pension not being enough to support 3 children. I'm talking about not having slept a full night in a month. I'm talking about you forgetting my birthday and then making fun of me with your friends." "What do you mean making fun of you? What are you talking about?" "You left your phone here, Jessica. I saw the text with Christine. I saw how you joked about me not having a life of my own." The silence this time was different. Heavier. It was the silence of someone caught red-handed. "Mom, I said that without thinking. You know how Christine is, always exaggerating everything. Don't insult my intelligence, Jessica. I read exactly what you wrote. My mom is loving it. It's not like she has her own life anymore. This gives her purpose. Do I look like I'm loving it?" "Mom, please don't be dramatic. It was a silly conversation. I adore you. You know that. If you adored me, you wouldn't have abandoned me for a month with no return date. If you adored me, you would have remembered my birthday. If you adored me, you wouldn't be planning to go to Australia for 4 more months. 4 months? Who told you that?" "You did. Last night." Another pause. I could picture her racking her suntanned brain, trying to remember exactly what she had promised in her tropical euphoria. "Well, yeah. Maybe I mentioned Australia, but it's not definite. Jake and I are just exploring possibilities. Jessica, listen to me carefully. You have 1 week to get back to Chicago or find another solution for your children. I will not continue to be your eternal backup plan." "Are you giving me an ultimatum? Seriously? After everything I did for you during my childhood?" The irony of that statement would have made me laugh if I hadn't been so furious. Everything you did for me? Like when I paid for your college by working double shifts? Or when I took out a mortgage on my home so you could buy your penthouse? Those were your decisions, Mom. Nobody forced you. You're right. Nobody forced me. But now I'm making my own decisions too. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. But for the first time in weeks, it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline. Half an hour later, my phone exploded with messages. First from Jessica. Mom, you can't do this to me. I have no one else. You're my only family. Don't abandon me now. The kids adore you. You can't hurt them like this. Then came messages from unknown numbers. Jessica's friends turned into soldiers in her emotional war. Christine. Carol, it's Christine. Jessica told me what happened. I know you're upset, but the kids aren't to blame. Rachel. Hi, Carol. This is Rachel, Jessica's friend. She's devastated. You can't abandon those innocent children over a whim. Melissa. Carol, it's Melissa. Jessica asked me to write to you. As a mother, I understand we can feel overwhelmed sometimes, but family comes first. A whim. That's what my physical and emotional exhaustion was to them. The whim of a cranky old woman. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat in my armchair with a notepad and wrote a list of all the things I had stopped doing to take care of Jessica's grandchildren. My craft classes at the senior center. The afternoon card games with the neighbors. My walks through Millennium Park. My library novels. My sacred naps. Cooking what I wanted to eat. Watching my TV shows. Visiting Michael's grave. Calling my cousin Rhonda in Milwaukee. Simply being in silence. The next day, Saturday, I had an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning, interrupting the battle royale Dylan and Emma were waging over the TV remote while I tried to give Chloe her bottle. It was Rick, Jessica's ex-husband. He was wearing an impeccable suit despite it being the weekend, as if he'd come straight from a business meeting. Hi, Carol. Can we talk? Rick had always been polite to me, but distant. During his marriage to Jessica, he treated me with the cool courtesy reserved for mothers-in-law, who are considered a necessary evil. Jessica called me, he said, perching on the edge of the sofa as if he didn't plan to stay long. She told me you're having issues. Taking care of the kids. Issues. That's how Jessica had translated my exhaustion and financial ruin. I'm not having issues taking care of my grandchildren, Rick. The issue is that they are not my responsibility. Oh, look, Carol, I get that you're tired. Kids are a handful. That's one of the reasons Jessica and I got divorced. But she's going through a tough time. She needs to find herself. And what about me? Don't I have a right to find myself? Rick looked at me as if I'd said something absurd. A 72-year-old woman wanting to find herself must have seemed like a joke to him. Carol, be realistic. You don't have commitments anymore. We have careers, social lives, projects. It's natural for those with more free time to handle family responsibilities. Free time, as if taking care of 3 small children 24/7 was a paid vacation. Rick, how much do you pay the babysitter when you have the kids on your weekends? Excuse me? The girl you hired to help you when the kids are with you. How much do you pay her? Well, Maria charges $15 an hour, but that's different. Different how? Because you're the grandmother. It's your family. Exactly. I'm the grandmother, not the mother. And I am definitely not a free domestic employee. Rick shifted uncomfortably in his seat, checking his expensive watch as if he had more important places to be. Look, Carol. What do you need? Money? I can help you with some money. The offer surprised me, but something in his tone deeply annoyed me. How much? Well, I could give you, say, $100 a week. $100 a week for taking care of 3 children 24 hours a day. Maria charged $15 an hour just on weekends. Rick, your ex-wife pays $300 a month at the hair salon. Are you offering me $100 a week to do a job a professional nanny would charge $1,500 for? It's just, well, you're not a stranger. The kids love you. The kids would love a professional nanny too if it came to that. The difference is, she would be paid what her work is worth. Rick stood up, clearly frustrated. Carol, you can't be this selfish. These kids are your own flesh and blood. My blood also runs through their mother's veins, Rick. And yet, she's on a beach in Bali while I'm handling her responsibilities. All right, he said, holding up his hands in surrender. What do you want exactly? I want Jessica to come back to Chicago and take care of her children. Or for the two of you to find a solution that doesn't involve turning an elderly woman into a full-time nanny. And if not? For the first time in the conversation, I smiled. If not, you'll have to figure it out without me. Rick left, slamming the door behind him, which made Chloe wake up crying. That night, I got the call I had been waiting for. Jessica, her voice breaking, with a tone I hadn't heard since she was a scared little girl. Mom, please. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. Precisely because you're my daughter, Jessica, I expected you to treat me better. And for the first time in decades, I was the one who hung up first. On Monday morning, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I woke up when I wanted to, not when I was awakened by a baby's cries or the fights of two hungry twins. I had made the decision Sunday night, after another desperate call from Jessica that ended with veiled threats about the consequences of abandoning your family. I dialed the number for the community daycare center in the neighborhood, and, in a voice that surprised me with its firmness, I said, "Good morning. My name is Carol Miller. I need an emergency placement for 3 children. Yes, I understand there's a waiting list. No, I can't wait. It's a family emergency." The director, Ms. Albright, a woman from my generation who understood the language of domestic crises without needing long explanations, scheduled a meeting with me that same afternoon. "Bring them all in, Carol. We'll see what we can do." For the first time in a month, I had my coffee and a muffin in complete silence. There were no screams, no rush, no little hands trying to snatch the food from my mouth, just the sound of my spoon clinking against the mug and the distant murmur of morning traffic. The coffee tasted like heaven. When was the last time I had truly enjoyed my breakfast? When had I been able to read the newspaper while I ate, without having to jump up every 2 minutes to clean up a spill or mediate a fight? At 9 o'clock, I dressed the 3 children with the military efficiency I had developed over the last month. Dylan protested because he wanted to watch TV. Emma cried because her favorite dress was in the laundry. Chloe refused to let me put on her shoes and decided to have an epic tantrum on the hallway floor. But for the first time since they arrived, their tantrums didn't unravel me. I had a plan. I had a way out. I had a liberation date. The daycare was a 15-minute walk from my condo, in a renovated old building that smelled of disinfectant and Play-Doh. Ms. Albright welcomed us into her office, a small room decorated with children's drawings and plants that someone watered with love. "Let's see, Carol," she said, adjusting her glasses to examine the paperwork I had hastily filled out. "The twins can enter the emergency social program immediately. It will be more complicated for the little one because we don't have a spot in the infant room, but I know someone who might be able to help." "How much does it cost?" I asked, dreading the answer. For family emergency cases, the rate is reduced. $50 per child per month, including meals. For the baby, if we can find an external spot, it would be $180 a month, less than what Jessica spent on manicures. "When can they start?" "Tomorrow morning, if you'd like." That night, I called Jessica. My voice sounded different even to me, calmer, but also colder. "The children are starting daycare tomorrow. You have until Friday to decide what you're going to do with your life and with your children's." "You put them in a daycare? Without asking me? They're my children." "Exactly. They're your children. And I already did my time as a mother 40 years ago. I'm not doing it again. Mom, please listen to me. I talked to Jake and we decided maybe Australia isn't a good idea right now. We could just stay in Bali for a few more weeks." "Jessica, I don't care what you decide to do with Jake. I care about what you decide to do with Dylan, Emma, and Chloe. Where is my understanding mother? Where is the woman who always supported me in everything?" That woman got tired of being understanding without receiving any understanding. She got tired of supporting without receiving any support. She got tired of giving without receiving even an ounce of recognition. "You can't leave me alone with this, Mom. You don't know what it's like to be a single mother in the modern world." The irony of that statement would have made me laugh under different circumstances. I, who had raised Jessica practically alone while Michael got drunk in the neighborhood bars, was getting a lecture on the difficulties of single motherhood. You have until Friday, Jessica. After that, you'll have to figure it out without me. On Tuesday morning, after dropping the 3 children off at their respective daycares, I walked home with a strange feeling in my chest. At first, I thought it was anxiety, but after a few minutes, I recognized the almost forgotten emotion. It was freedom. Freedom to walk at my own pace, without rushing. Freedom to stop at the bakery window and decide what I wanted to eat without having to consider 3 different picky palates. Freedom to smile at the newsstand vendor without having to watch that no child was darting into the street. I arrived home, and the silence greeted me like an embrace. It wasn't the empty silence of loneliness, but the full silence of peace. The silence of a tidy home that would stay tidy. The silence of furniture that wouldn't be scaled by little climbers. The silence of a television that could stay off until I decided to turn it on. I made myself a cup of tea calmly, using my favorite mug, the porcelain one with flowers that I had kept on the top shelf of the hutch to protect it from curious little hands. I sat in my armchair, not on the floor playing with building blocks. For the first time in a month, I opened a book. It was a romance novel I had started before the children arrived. A simple story about a mature woman who finds love after being widowed. For the past few weeks, every time I tried to read a few lines, someone needed something. Water, food, attention, medicine, stories, songs, hugs. Now I could read entire paragraphs without interruption. I could lose myself in the story of another woman, even a fictional one, who had managed to rebuild her life after years of complete dedication to others. At noon, I made myself exactly what I wanted to eat: a cheese and ham omelet, a tomato salad with extra virgin olive oil and toasted bread. Not mac and cheese, not baby food, not pureed mush, no negotiations over rejected vegetables. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, listening to the news on the radio without having to turn up the volume to compete with childish voices. Afterward, I allowed myself a luxury I had forgotten existed: a nap. I woke up at 4 in the afternoon, rested for the first time in weeks. My body didn't ache from carrying weight. It wasn't designed to carry at my age. My knees didn't protest from getting up off the floor 50 times a day. My shoulders weren't stiff from nights of interrupted sleep. I decided to go for a walk around the neighborhood. It had been months since I'd strolled without a specific purpose, just for the pleasure of moving my legs and breathing fresh air. The neighborhood looked different when I walked through it without the constant urgency of getting somewhere. I stopped to chat with Mrs. Davis from the corner store, who asked about the kids with genuine curiosity. "They're in daycare," I told her. And for the first time, that phrase didn't sound like an apology. "Good for you, Carol. You look more rested. Grandkids are a blessing, but they're also hard work. A blessing that is also hard work." Mrs. Davis, without knowing it, had put into words something I hadn't been able to express. My love for my grandchildren wasn't at odds with acknowledging that caring for them was exhausting. I kept walking until I reached the small park where I used to take Dylan and Emma. From a bench, I watched other grandmothers playing with their grandchildren. But the difference was obvious. They were there by choice for a few hours, accompanied by the mothers who were chatting on other benches while keeping a watchful eye. I had been alone with the full responsibility, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no end date in sight. That night, after picking up the kids from their daycares, calmer, more tired, more cooperative after a day of structured activities, I received an unexpected call. It was my cousin Rhonda from Milwaukee. "Carol, how are you, cousin? It's been months since we talked." Rhonda was my age but had lived a completely different life. Also a widow, but with no children. She had worked her whole life as a teacher, retired with a decent pension, and now spent her time traveling with a group of retired friends. I'm rediscovering who I am," I replied, surprised by my own honesty. "Rediscovering? What happened?" I told her everything. The unexpected arrival of the children, Jessica's abandonment, the mocking text messages, the desperate calls, my decision to stand up for myself for the first time in my life. "Carol, I am so happy to hear you like this," she said when I finished. "Do you know how many years I've been waiting for you to rebel against that daughter of yours? Was it that obvious? My dear cousin, a blind man could see that Jessica had you as her emotional servant. The difference is that now you see it too. That night, after putting the children to bed, who fell asleep much faster after their day at daycare, I stayed awake not with worry, but with something I hadn't felt in decades. Hope. Hope that maybe at 72 I could still learn to live for myself. Hope that maybe it wasn't too late to discover what I wanted to do with the years I had left. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Carol Ann Miller still had the right to exist as something more than Jessica's mother and the available grandmother of Dylan, Emma, and Chloe. For the first time in a month, I fell asleep smiling. On Thursday afternoon, as I was enjoying my second cup of tea of the day, another newly recovered luxury, the doorbell rang with the aggressive insistence only used by desperate people or persistent salespeople. It was Jessica. She had returned from Bali with the same golden tan she'd left with, but with something different in her eyes. A mixture of fury and panic I hadn't seen since she was a teenager and had been caught lying about her grades. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, pushing the door open without waiting for an invitation and dragging a suitcase that seemed to weigh more than she did. The children ran to her like hungry puppies, but Jessica barely gave them a distracted hug before turning directly to me. Her tropical perfume, mixed with the smell of airplane air and exhaustion, invaded my small living room like a toxic cloud. "How could you put my kids in a public daycare without my permission?" "Good morning, Jessica. So nice to see you. I missed you too," I replied with an irony that surprised even myself. "Don't get sarcastic with me, Mom. I spoke with Ms. Albright and found out you registered the kids as a case of family abandonment. Do you have any idea how much damage that could do to my professional reputation if someone finds out?" There it was. She wasn't worried about her children's well-being, or my exhaustion, or even the situation itself. She was worried about her reputation. "Jessica, when was the last time you asked me how I was doing?" "How you're doing? Mom, please, don't be dramatic. You look perfectly fine. You even look more rested than when I left." "I look more rested because last night I slept for 8 straight hours for the first time in a month, and the day before, I was able to eat a full meal without being interrupted. And 3 days ago, I read an entire chapter of a book. And what's so wrong with that? I gave you a chance to feel useful, to have a purpose." The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. "I don't need you to give me purpose." The shout echoed off the walls of my small condo with a force I didn't know I still had. The children fell instantly silent. Chloe started to cry. Dylan and Emma hid behind the sofa as if a bomb had gone off. I had never shouted like that. In 72 years of life, I had never raised my voice that way. And it felt liberating. My purpose is not to be your free nanny, Jessica. My purpose is not to sacrifice what little I have left of my life so you can live yours without any responsibilities. What little you have left of your life. Mom, please. You're a healthy 72-year-old woman. You could live another 20 years. Exactly. 20 years. And I have no intention of spending them cleaning up the emotional disasters you leave in your wake. Jessica collapsed onto my sofa, as if her legs could no longer support her. For the first time since she arrived, she truly looked at me, not as one looks at a piece of furniture or an employee, but as one looks at a person. "I don't understand what happened to you, Mom. You were always so understanding, so willing to help." "What happened to me, Jessica, is that I realized understanding was just another word for foolish, and willing to help really meant available to be exploited." Exploited? Are you seriously going to use that word with me? I stood up from my armchair and walked over to the chest of drawers where I kept my important documents. I took out the folder I had prepared during my days of relative freedom and placed it on the coffee table. "Do you know how much money I've given you throughout your adult life?" I asked, opening the folder. I calculated everything. Inside were receipts, bank statements, and handwritten notes in my shaky but precise script. College, $50,000, which I paid for by working double shifts at the dry cleaners. Your wedding, $15,000, which I took from my life savings. The down payment for your penthouse, $90,000, for which I am still paying a mortgage. The gifts for the children, the clothes, the toys, the meals when you visited. Another $20,000, approximately. Jessica stared at the papers as if she were seeing ghosts. In total, $175,000. That's not counting the hours of free childcare, not counting the sleepless nights when you were little and sick, not counting the years of my youth I dedicated to raising you practically on my own. I didn't ask for any of that, Mom. Those were your decisions. You're right. They were my decisions. Decisions I made because I thought I was investing in a relationship, not financing a stranger who would make fun of me with her friends. I showed her the screenshot of the text messages I had printed out. My mom is loving it. It's not like she has her own life anymore. This gives her purpose, I read aloud. Do you think someone who invested $175,000 and 40 years of her life in you deserves to be described like that? Jessica buried her face in her hands. When she spoke, her voice was different, smaller. It was a stupid thing to say. I wasn't thinking. I was trying to sound, I don't know, cool, carefree. At whose expense, Jessica? At the expense of your mother's dignity? The children had stopped playing and were watching us with those enormous eyes kids have when they sense the world of adults is crumbling around them. What do you want me to do, Mom? What exactly do you want? I want you to respect me. I want you to value what I've done for you. And I want you to understand that I am a person, not a resource. I do respect you, Mom. Of course I respect you. No, Jessica, you don't. If you respected me, you wouldn't have planned to go to Australia without asking if I could continue to care for your children. If you respected me, you would have remembered my birthday. If you respected me, you wouldn't have described me as a woman with no life of her own. I sat across from her, looking directly into her eyes. I'm going to tell you something I should have told you years ago. You can't keep buying my love with crumbs of attention and expect me to pay the full price for your comfort. Buying your love? Mom, you're my mother. A mother's love is supposed to be unconditional. Love can be unconditional, Jessica. But respect is earned, and my availability has limits. A long silence fell. The children had returned to their games, but quietly, as if they understood that something important was being decided in that room. What happens now? Jessica finally asked. Now you're going to decide what kind of daughter you want to be and what kind of mother you want to be. I've already decided what kind of grandmother I'm going to be. What kind of grandmother? One who loves her grandchildren but doesn't live for them. One who helps them but doesn't sacrifice herself into non-existence. One who says yes when she can and wants to, and who says no when she has to. Jessica leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. I don't know how to do this alone, Mom. I don't know how to be a mother to 3 kids on my own. I didn't know how to do it either when I was raising you, but I learned. And I did it without dumping you with your grandmother to go on a worldwide adventure. My circumstances are different. Everyone's circumstances are different, Jessica, but the responsibility to your children is the same. I stood up and went to the kitchen. I needed a glass of water and a few minutes to process the most honest conversation I'd had with my daughter in decades. When I returned, Jessica was playing with Chloe, making funny faces that drew crystal-clear giggles from the little girl. For a moment, I saw the child she had once been, curious, loving, full of life. Can you teach me? She asked without looking up from the baby. Teach you what? How to be a better mother. How to be a better daughter, too. It was the first time in years Jessica had asked me for something that had nothing to do with money, time, or personal sacrifice. I can try, I said. But this time, it's going to be different. Different how? This time, I'm not going to rescue you from the consequences of your decisions. This time, I'm not going to solve your problems for you. This time, I'm going to be your mother, not your employee. That night, Jessica slept on the sofa. The children slept in my bed, as they had for the past month. But for the first time, I didn't feel like my space had been invaded. I felt like my family was together, but under new rules. Before I went to bed, Jessica hugged me. A real hug, not one of the perfunctory ones I'd been getting for years. Thank you, Mom. For what? For not letting me get away with being a terrible daughter anymore. I slept better that night than I had in a long time, knowing that I had finally reclaimed not only my dignity, but also the possibility of a real relationship with my daughter. Over the next few days, it seemed we had finally found a balance. Jessica had temporarily moved into my condo, sleeping on the pull-out couch while she looked for a smaller, more affordable apartment. The kids continued at the daycare, but now she was the one dropping them off and picking them up. I got my afternoons of freedom and my peaceful breakfast back. For the first time in years, our conversations had substance. She told me about her real fears as a single mother, about the financial pressure, about how lost she had felt after the divorce. I shared things I had never verbalized before. How alone I had felt during her childhood, how hard it had been to work double shifts to keep her in school, how invisible I had felt for decades. It was like we were meeting for the first time as adults, not just as a mother and daughter trapped in roles that had stopped working long ago. On Wednesday morning, after a week of this new routine, Jessica left early to see an apartment in Berwyn that was within her budget. I stayed with the children until it was time for daycare, enjoying a quiet coffee while they ate breakfast without any rush. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. May I speak with Carol Miller? This is she. My name is Patricia Evans. I'm a social worker with the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. We've received an anonymous complaint regarding possible child neglect at your residence. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Excuse me, a complaint? I don't understand. According to the information we received, you have been caring for 3 minors in inadequate conditions, and apparently the parents have abandoned the children in your custody without proper legal arrangements. But I'm their grandmother. I'm just watching them temporarily while my daughter finds a place to live. Mrs. Miller, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. I have an order to come to your residence this morning to assess the children's living conditions. If the responsible parents are not present, and if the conditions are not suitable, we may be forced to take child protective measures. Child protective measures. Those words danced in my mind like a nightmare. Had someone reported me for mistreating my own grandchildren? Who could do such a thing? Can you tell me who made the complaint? Anonymous complaints are kept confidential, Mrs. Miller, but I can tell you that the caller seemed very concerned for the children's welfare. They mentioned there was screaming in the house, that the children appeared neglected, and that as an elderly person, you lacked the capacity to care for them properly. Screaming, neglected, lacked capacity because I was old. A chill ran down my spine as the pieces of the puzzle began to click into place. When did you receive this complaint? Monday afternoon, Mrs. Miller. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Monday afternoon. The day after my confrontation with Rick, just a day after my confrontation with Jessica, just after I had screamed at her for the first time in my life, just after I had set boundaries and showed her the documents of all the money I had given her. Could it have been Jessica? Was my own daughter capable of reporting me as revenge for confronting her? No, impossible. We had made peace. We'd had honest conversations. She had apologized. But then I remembered something that chilled me to the bone. On Thursday night, when Jessica arrived from Bali, she had been on the phone with someone after the kids went to bed. I had overheard snippets from my room. She can't treat me like this. After everything I've done for her. She's a manipulative old woman. The kids are suffering. At the time, I thought she was just venting to a friend. Now I realized she might have been planting the seeds for her revenge. An hour later, when the social worker knocked on my door, I had already dressed the children in their best clothes and cleaned the condo until it was spotless. Patricia Evans was a young woman, maybe Jessica's age, with the serious expression officials adopt when they expect to find a scandal. Good morning, Mrs. Miller. Are the children home? Yes, they're right here. We were just getting ready to take them to daycare. The 3 children surrounded me like chicks protecting their mother hen. Dylan gripped my hand tightly, Emma hugged my leg, and Chloe held out her little arms for me to pick her up. Patricia observed the scene with professional eyes, taking notes in a small book. Where is the children's mother? She left early to look at an apartment. She's finding a place to live with her children. How long have the children been in your sole care? About a month and a half. But my daughter is back now and is taking responsibility for them. Patricia continued her inspection, checking the refrigerator, the cupboards, the bedrooms. She took pictures of everything and made constant notes. The children appear to be well cared for, she finally admitted. But I need to speak with the mother immediately. Do you have her phone number? I gave her Jessica's number, and Patricia called her from my landline. Jessica Miller? This is Patricia Evans, a social worker with DCFS. I need you to come to your mother's home immediately. We've received a complaint of child neglect. I couldn't hear Jessica's response, but I saw Patricia's expression gradually change. I'm sorry? You're saying you were the one who made the complaint? I see. Can you explain your concerns? I understand. Yes, that would be best. Patricia hung up and looked at me with an expression that was hard to read. Your daughter says that she was indeed the one who made the complaint. She is concerned that you do not have the physical or emotional capacity to care for 3 small children, and that the children have suffered as a result of that situation. The world tilted under my feet. Jessica, my own daughter, the child I had raised, educated, and financed for decades, had called social services to report me. She says she's on her way here now, Patricia continued. She wants to request that the children be prohibited from being in your care without professional supervision. Professional supervision? A court order that would require a social worker to be present whenever the children are with you. It's a measure for cases where we believe there is a risk to the minors. A risk. After I had cared for them, fed them, protected them, and loved them for over a month, after I had sacrificed my health, my money, and my peace of mind for them, now I was a risk. 20 minutes later, Jessica arrived. But this wasn't the vulnerable, repentant woman who had been living in my home for the past week. This was the cold, calculating Jessica I had known for years, the one who appeared when things didn't go exactly her way. Patricia, thank you for coming so quickly, she said, as if they were old friends. As I explained on the phone, I'm very worried about my children's well-being. Explain your specific concerns. My mother is 72 years old and has obvious mobility issues. Last Thursday, I heard her screaming at the children very aggressively. I also believe she might be developing memory problems or early dementia, because sometimes she forgets to give them their medication on time. Every word was a stab, lies mixed with half-truths, presented with the surgical precision of someone who knew exactly how to manipulate the system. I'm also concerned about her emotional stability, Jessica continued. She has been very aggressive with me lately, and I believe the children are absorbing that negativity. Is there a specific incident that concerns you? Yes. Last Thursday, I had to confront her because she screamed in a terrifying way. The children were hiding behind the sofa, clearly traumatized. It was true that I had screamed. It was true that the children had hidden, but Jessica was only telling one side of the story, the side that favored her. Patricia looked at me with an evaluative expression. Is it true that you screamed at the children, Mrs. Miller? I didn't scream at them. I screamed at my daughter. It was the first time in my life I had lost my temper, after weeks of exhaustion and... My voice broke. After finding out she was making fun of me with her friends. See? Jessica interjected quickly. Loss of emotional control. That's exactly what I was worried about. Patricia was taking notes frantically. In her notebook, my moment of liberation was becoming evidence of instability. My cry for dignity was being transformed into a symptom of incapacity. Mrs. Miller, do you have any kind of medical or psychological support to manage the stress of caring for the children? I don't need medical support. I just needed my daughter to take responsibility for her own children. But as I said it, I realized how it sounded, like a bitter old woman blaming her daughter for her own limitations. Jessica had won. With a single phone call, she had turned my month of sacrifice into proof of my incompetence. She had transformed her abandonment into my problem. She had made my legitimate confrontations seem like mental instability. What's going to happen now? I asked, my voice a whisper. Patricia closed her notebook and looked at me with what seemed like professional compassion. For now, I don't see evidence of active mistreatment. The children are well cared for. But based on what I've heard, I am going to recommend that a gradual supervision plan be established. What does that mean? It means you will be able to continue seeing your grandchildren, but only with your daughter or a family mediator present, at least until we can better assess the situation. A family mediator. To see my own grandchildren. That night, after Patricia left and Jessica took the children to stay temporarily at a friend's house, I was left alone in my condo. Truly alone for the first time in a month and a half. But this loneliness was different. It wasn't the freedom I had tasted the week before. It was the complete isolation of someone who had been labeled as dangerous to the people she loved most in the world. I sat in my armchair and looked at the family photos on the wall. All those images of happy moments now seemed to mock me. I had been so naive to believe that things had really changed between Jessica and me. The phone rang. It was Jessica. "Mom, I want you to know this isn't personal. It's just that I need to protect my children." "Protect them from what, Jessica?" "From the woman who cared for them when you abandoned them. I abandoned them temporarily, and you took advantage of that situation to manipulate me emotionally." "Manipulate you? Is demanding respect manipulation?" "Mom, I just hope that in time you can reflect on your behavior and get the help you need." The help I needed. As if I were the one with the problem. That night, I understood something that broke my heart, but also freed me from my last illusions. I had raised a monster. A beautiful, intelligent, and sophisticated monster. But a monster, nonetheless. And now that monster had used the system against me, turning my love into evidence of my incompetence. But as I cried in my empty armchair, in my far too quiet home, I also realized something else. For the first time in decades, I was completely free. Free of expectations. Free of obligations. Free of the illusion that Jessica would one day truly value me. It was a painful freedom, but it was freedom at last. The first days after the complaint were the darkest of my life. I woke up each morning expecting to feel the familiar pain of abandonment. But instead, I found something strange. Silence. Not the empty silence of loneliness, but the full silence of possibilities, of someone who could finally hear her own thoughts. On Friday morning, a week after Jessica took the children, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I got dressed up. Not because anyone was coming to visit. Not because I had a doctor's appointment or an important errand. I got dressed up because I wanted to see someone beautiful in the mirror. I put on the navy blue dress I had bought for my neighbor's daughter's wedding and had only worn twice. I put on a little makeup, just a touch of blush and lipstick. I styled my white hair into an elegant bun that made me feel distinguished instead of just old. When I looked in the hallway mirror, I saw a woman I had forgotten existed. Carol Ann Miller. Not Jessica's mom, not the available grandma, just Carol. I decided to go for a walk with no particular destination, something I hadn't done in years. Chicago in October was beautiful. The leaves on the trees in Lincoln Park were beginning to turn golden, and the crisp air filled my lungs with a sense of renewal I hadn't experienced in decades. Every step took me further from the exhausted, resentful woman I had been for the last month, and closer to someone who was rediscovering what it meant to exist for herself. At a small cafe near the Lincoln Park Conservatory, I decided to sit and have something. I ordered a latte and a slice of apple pie because I wanted to, because I could afford it. Because no one was going to judge my food choices. "Are you by yourself?" the waiter, an older man who could have been my contemporary, asked. "Yes," I replied, "and I'm loving it." He smiled as if he understood exactly what I meant. I enjoy my own company too. It's the most honest company there is. As I savored my coffee, I watched people pass by on the street. Families with small children, elderly couples holding hands, young people rushing to jobs or dates. All living their lives, all with their own stories, their own dramas, their own joys. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like part of the world, but not obligated to sacrifice myself for it. That afternoon, when I returned home, I found an envelope that had been slipped under my door. It was a letter from my cousin Rhonda in Milwaukee. "Dear Carol," it said in her elegant handwriting, "I've been thinking about our phone call and wanted to propose something. A group of my friends and I are taking a trip to Portugal in November. 10 days visiting Lisbon, Porto, and some small towns. Would you like to join us? It's not expensive, and I think a change of scenery would do you a world of good." A trip. When was the last time I had taken a trip for pleasure? Not out of obligation or family emergency. I couldn't remember. I replied that same night, writing by hand on my favorite stationery. "Dear Rhonda, I accept your invitation. It's time for Carol Ann to discover Portugal." On Monday, I received a call from Patricia, the social worker. "Mrs. Miller, I have good news. After reviewing the case more thoroughly and speaking with the director of the daycare center where the children were, We have determined that there is no evidence of neglect or mistreatment. The report will be closed with no further action. What changed? I asked. Ms. Albright explained the true circumstances of the case. She told us that you came to her for help because you were overwhelmed caring for 3 small children alone, and that you made the responsible decision to seek professional support. That isn't neglect, Mrs. Miller. That's prudence. And my daughter? Your daughter? Well, let's just say that when we interviewed her more thoroughly, certain inconsistencies in her story became apparent. Apparently, we also received information from other sources about the true circumstances of the initial abandonment of the children. I didn't ask what sources. I didn't care. I was just glad to know my reputation had been officially restored. Does this mean I can see my grandchildren freely? It means there are no legal restrictions, Mrs. Miller. But family decisions are just that. Family matters. You will have to resolve that part on your own. That afternoon, Jessica appeared at my door unannounced. She looked thinner, paler, less sure of herself than the last time I had seen her. Mom, we need to talk. Do we? I asked. But I let her in. She sat on the edge of the sofa, not relaxing, as if unsure she was welcome. DCFS closed the case, she said without preamble. I know. Do you also know they're considering opening an investigation into my parental fitness? I didn't, but I wasn't surprised. Jessica had played with fire and gotten burned. What do you want, Jessica? I want to apologize. What I did was unforgivable. You're right. It was unforgivable. She fell silent, perhaps waiting for me to downplay her betrayal as I had with all the others. But that Carol had died the moment she discovered her own daughter had called social services. Can you forgive me? She finally asked. I can forgive you, Jessica. But I can't forget. And I definitely can't trust you again. What does that mean? It means our relationship is going to be very different from now on. It means I will never again be your emergency solution. It means I will never again put your needs before my own well-being. And the children? The children will always be my grandchildren, and I will always love them. But I will love them on my own terms, not yours. I don't understand what you mean. I mean that if you want me to be a part of their lives, you are going to have to respect me. You're going to have to ask me for things, not demand them. You're going to have to value my time, not take it for granted. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, life continued its normal course. I'm going on a trip to Portugal in 2 weeks, I told her. 10 days with friends. When I get back, if you want to try to rebuild something between us, we can talk. But it will be on my terms. Your terms? My terms are simple. Respect, honesty, and the acknowledgement that I am an independent person, not an extension of your life. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. The kids ask about you constantly. I'm sure they do. And when you're ready to be a daughter who values her mother as much as a mother loves her children, you can bring them to visit. How will I know when I'm ready? When you can come to see me without needing anything from me. When you can ask me how I am without it being a prelude to asking for a favor. When you can see that I have as much right to my own life as you do. She left without another word. And I felt neither sadness nor relief. I simply felt the satisfaction of having spoken my complete truth for the first time in decades. The trip to Portugal was a revelation. Rhonda and her friends welcomed me into their group with the natural ease of mature women who have learned to value authentic friendship. We visited tile markets in Lisbon, walked the cobblestone streets of Porto, and laughed like schoolgirls during dinners that lasted for hours. One night, sitting on a terrace overlooking the Douro River, Rhonda told me, Carol, you look 20 years younger than when I saw you at Christmas. I feel 20 years younger. What changed? I learned that love doesn't mean unconditional availability. I learned that being a good mother doesn't require being a martyr. I learned that I have the right to exist for myself. When I returned to Chicago, I found a bouquet of flowers at my door. The card read, Grandma Carol, we miss you so much. Can we visit on Sunday? Love, Dylan, Emma, and Chloe, and their mom, who is learning to be a better person. On Sunday, when the doorbell rang, I opened it to find 3 children running toward me with the same joy as always, followed by a Jessica who seemed genuinely nervous. Hi, Mom. Can I come in? You can come in, I said. But this time, it's a visit, not an occupation. The children filled my home with laughter and hugs for 2 wonderful hours. We played. I told them stories about my trip. I taught them a few Portuguese words I had learned. But the most important thing was that when it was time to leave, they left. Jessica didn't try to leave any of the kids just for tonight. She didn't ask me to watch them the following weekend. She didn't try to turn the visit into an imposition. "Thanks, Mom," she said as she left. "For what?" "For teaching me that real love includes boundaries." That night, as I tidied up the toys scattered around the living room, I didn't feel exhaustion. I felt the quiet satisfaction of someone who has shared her time by choice, not by obligation. 6 months later, as I write these lines in my new journal, another small luxury I now allow myself, I can say that my life has completely changed. Not because the external circumstances are different, but because I am different. Jessica and I have built a new relationship, one based on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. I see the children regularly, but because we both want it to happen, not because it's my duty. She sometimes asks for help, but she accepts it when I say no. The children have grown. They have learned that loving grandma doesn't mean they have an automatic right to her unlimited time and energy. And strangely, our time together is more special because it's chosen, not imposed. I have new plans for the coming year. A painting class, another trip with Rhonda, maybe adopting a small cat to keep me company without demanding more than I'm willing to give. For the first time in 72 years, I am the owner of my own life. And if you, who are listening to me, have lived through something similar, or know someone who is going through a similar situation, I want to ask you, how long will you allow your love for others to become a denial of yourself? Think about it, and share your answer with me in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Maybe your support will help this message reach someone who needs to hear it today.